James cleverly feels he needs to get his retaliation in first against those in the party who think any kind of engagement with China that doesn't take the form of finger-wagging and condemnation is, some kind of surrender. And he is very robustly making the point that, yes, he will raise these issues, but on the other hand, we do need to talk to China. We can't ignore them, and we can't shut them out.
James Cleverly has promised not to shy away from the tough conversations as he becomes the first senior minister to visit China in 5 years. Foreign Secretary is in Beijing today for meetings with the Foreign Minister and Vice President. Here he is speaking this morning, addressing concerns about the government's approach to China.
I've had a number of conversations with senior representatives of the Chinese government, and I have raised human rights in every single one of those meetings, and I will continue to do so.
Alicia Cairns, who's the Tory MP who chairs the Foreign Affairs Committee, explains some of the concerns around the trip.
So I don't believe there is any desire to appease China. I think Rishi and James Cleverly are very clear-eyed on the threat. But the reality is government is a juggernaut. The civil service is very difficult to navigate. They need to make sure there should be someone sat potentially within the Cabinet Office or within the Foreign Office who is looking at every piece of legislation coming forward from this government and looking at it from a China perspective.
So it's quite a juggling act for James Cleverly to carry out. Chris Smyth is the Whitehall editor for The Times, joins us now live from the Times office in Westminster. Chris, James Cleverly seemed to have sort of gone the attack against the sort of the China hawks in the Tory backbenches before they'd even said anything. He clearly knows how sensitive this trip is.
Yes, hello, Matt. And we are in recess, so the main politics is happening on the other side of the world, where, as you say, the government, James Cleverly feels he needs to get his retaliation in first against those in the party who think any kind of engagement with China that doesn't take the form of finger-wagging and condemnation is, some kind of surrender. And he is very robustly making the point that, yes, he will raise these issues, but on the other hand, we do need to talk to China. We can't ignore them, and we can't shut them out. And this is something that Rishi Sunak has been very insistent on since he came into office. He's rejected the idea that Liz Truss had designated China as a threat and said, look, we can't solve problems like climate change or regulation of AI without China. We do need to talk to them. They're a fifth of humanity, one of the biggest economies in the world. And we just have to balance that and be nuanced, as Rishi Sunak puts it.
You mentioned politics happening on the other side of the world. Back closer to home, we've just heard some breaking news in the last couple of minutes, Chris. The number of migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats has topped more than 20,000 so far this year. 300 people made the crossing on Tuesday, taking the provisional total so far this year 20,101. Labour's Stephen Kinnock, the Shadow Immigration Minister, saying rather than stopping the boats, Rishi Sunak has fundamentally failed to get a grip and crossings are rocketing on his watch. Actually, it does look like the number of arrivals so far this year is about 20% below the equivalent number last year at this point anyway. So down 20% is not bad, but will that qualify as stopping the boats if we get to the end of the year meeting Rishi Sunak's one of his 5 pledges?
Well, exactly. You make the point, and Rishi Sunak will no doubt say numbers are down, we're making progress. But as you say, the pledge was not to reduce the boats by 20%. The pledge was to stop the boats. And by making such an unequivocal promise, the Prime Minister doesn't really leave himself much wiggle room if there are still significant numbers arriving by the end of the year. And, he can seek to redefine it as passing the legislation needed to do it and point to progress. But there will be a lot of voters, and indeed a lot of Tory MPs, who, unless numbers really drop off significantly over the next few months, will be thinking we failed and we need to try something more drastic.
Chris, really good to speak to you. Thanks for that update. Chris Smyth there, Whitehall editor of The Times. And that news just in, more than 20,000 people have been detected crossing the English Channel in small boats so far this year. That is down 20% on the same point last year.